like from like visiting the organizations here like a few months ago. Okay, because there was like one really nice example regarding the financial help for the refugees, in which they didn't like offer the people from the Ukraine the stuff or like something that like we consider as their needs, but they provided them like checks, like financial checks or something like this that they can buy for their need. And this was like one of the examples that maybe how we should approach people in these situations, that to offer the humanitarian help, but also empower the people, so not like consider that what are their needs and we will like give them what they need because we think this is the idea, but leave them like to be independent also in the situation when they are dependent on some help. So still like try to find this space in which we can like empower people to act independently. Okay.
Yeah, also I want to support this voice because I had the same thing in my mind to mention that it's a good practice of this situation that was for the last 2 years, that refugees receive cash assistance or, for example, vouchers to shops. Here in Warsaw, I'm here on behalf of Warsaw Center for Social Development. It's a city administrative unit. Here in Warsaw, we have cash assistance from different international organizations, for example, from UNCHR and also Red Cross. And as well, we also have local NGOs that provide material, help, for example, boxes with some products. And at the beginning of the full-scale war, this boxes contains like a lot of things, but then this kind of aid was lower and lower. So, for example, we saw such situations when refugees stay in a very long line for a whole day and receive, for example, one shampoo and one oil. So it's better to provide them with, for example, cash assistance or other kind of support.
Any other voices or suggestions in terms of this first question?
If I may, I would say that generally we may say that the support starts with humanitarian aid. We all experience the system being not prepared for such number of people acceptance in our countries. So it was based mostly on the citizens' support. And once this first phase, I would say, of the refugee process stops, then we move on into empowerment. And as it was very well researched and described also in the book, we started with language skills, right? And as far as I know, in all our countries, it was very well prepared from the public sector, non-governmental sector. Then the education system for the children. Many women came here only because of the children, right? So to protect them. And unfortunately, the case of Poland shows that many of them decided to go back to Ukraine because of the children, because of the education system not meeting the requirements. And of course the labor market support, labor market facilitations, and all three aspects together build the empowerment. And it's a like long-term process, because as we know, many of the Ukrainians simply have the possibility to go back. There is nothing to go back for. Yes, the houses, the flats are being taken over by the Russians, because they decide to do it in the territory when there is the accession. So this is very important ongoing process of empowerment, of building themselves again in the new realities. And without this empowering support in terms of education and labor market, it's not going to be possible, right? A further integration, assimilation possibly will not be possible.
Yeah. Just
One more voice.
yeah, and just wanted to give some remarks to your opinion. Although I totally agree with you that at the beginning we had to make an excellent diagnosis of the condition of the person, because sometimes it can happen that the person has money but don't have any other information, transportation or other help to find the relatives in the city. So license, so A means
Direct aid, right?
yeah, means a little bit larger scale, how can we support them, and the first cafe and the first group voice is important, but after that we have to declare which kind of needs have the person, and after that we can targeting the support much better, because in our case we realized that a lot of things collected by the citizens are staying in the storages and never was distributed because it was not well targeted, and there are totally different things or support needed for the person arriving, or after special days it was not important to have a shampoo. Then they needed more transportation options or other kind of support. So I think so it's important to ask the person what they are needing and how can we help effectively and which kind of support would be better to have any safe situation for the family and for the person who has to travel to a foreign country.
Yes, so to sum up, it is about, the key here is when the humanitarian aid humanitarian aid needs are on the basic level matched, and then we can start think about further steps, right? So that's how we see it also here. Am I right?
Yeah.
So shall we move to the second point, which is, as you know, biggest challenges according to your projects and the results of your studies. So the question is, what are the main challenges of refugees? I know it's hard to say, probably the list is quite long, but let's start maybe with some of the most significant elements.
Okay, maybe I can start. Maybe I can say about, I think the core challenge in Poland, it's a lack of the national central migration policy. I don't know what is the situation in other Visegrad countries. Do you have any conceptual documents and migration policy? Here in Poland we have kind of problem with it, but new government already announced that they will develop migration policy, and we will have the draft of document until the end of this year, and also it will influence the law on foreigners. So it's another challenge that we have a lot of changes of our law in Poland. This one that regarding Ukrainian refugees, but also all other foreigners. Also that is why we don't have such central migration policy, so we don't have common directions about integration, and every railroad ship city tried to create their own strategy or directions. For example, here in Warsaw, we created strategy of international dialogue for years 2018-2022, and now we're waiting for this central policy, and then we will try to create a concept based on this national migration policy. So I'm also interested to hear, do you have such documents in the countries?
In Slovakia, we have such documents, but I will be like more critical. I don't think that this will help you. Because I think like mostly the integration process is about the local level. So I think the more important like is if you have the policy on the local level, on the level of the municipality about the migration and integration of like foreign people, I think like this is like great. That's like this is starting point because you meet all of the, like what are the needs of the people that are coming here, the local conditions, like specifics in your locality. In the national policy, we have in Slovakia national migration policy, and it's so general that like, and the some of the policies are written on the paper, but if there is a strategy and it's not meeting with the financing of the strategy, so then like it can end up as a paper, like with the promising aims, promising objectives, but without any funding. So it doesn't matter. So then it's like nobody can really control if you meet it. So it's really like declarative. And as you know, that situation in Slovakia, we are really not welcoming country for the like any migrants, let's say. So it's like, but it's not written in the national migration policy. So when you look at the document, it looks like that we are really like open, but the reality is different. So all of the other laws that are like, for example, in the labor market, it's really hard for people like outside the European Union to get the job in the labor market. So, but in the like strategy document is written that this is somehow the priority. But in the practice, you cannot see that this is the implementation. So from my point of view, it's like nice when on the national level you have the strategy, but it's also connected with the funding, and it's really the strategy that has the meaningful like aims, objectives, and which are meet. Also, when the government changed, for example, it happened like in our country, so that they are not following the strategy because it was not approved by the government that is now. So,
but are there any local strategies?
There is some, like there are some.
But that's not the regular case.
That's not the regular case. And if we have, for example, in the law, like in other areas, it can be that in the law that the municipality have to have the local strategy, but we have it in the use work, for example, for a couple of years, and there are a lot of cities which doesn't have the documents like this. And what they can do, they will not, charge them or something like it's right. So I think that if there is on the local level, like really the well-established connection between the local government, between the communities, NGOs, and this network is working, I think it's most valuable, I think. And this is also one of the, because your question was challenge, this is also one of the challenges, how to build this on the local level, this cooperation between the municipalities and between the NGOs and like the other sectors, because we know that in some localities it's working very well, and it was from the beginning of the war, you could see also how the cities react on the like crisis, and in some cases it was really like challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do think that the situation in Czech Republic is quite different to the situation in Slovakia. There is some kind of migration policy, but this doesn't really meet the practice, right? And the local level and the implementation of this policy, the government officials, the NGOs are just moving in it, doing what they can, and there's no pressure on long-term effects of the policy and on keeping the situation at least as it is, because we do have some signals that a part of the migrants from Ukraine to Czech Republic are falling victims to better access to accommodation or in labor market or things like that, and nobody knows what to do because we do not have any kind of policies to keep the people in the situation they are, at least that they are now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Perfect.
I was thinking about that situation that sometimes is a problem if you haven't such kind of migration policy, and sometimes is a problem if you have such kind of So the Hungarian migration policy is well known in European Union, so our Prime Minister declared that we don't need any kind of migrants. And
You not need service strategy.
it's written in its publication and journal article, and it's well known in the country. Although the government created an agreement with 6 umbrella NGO organizations and gave some money to manage that question, which important and not avoidable. And otherwise, we have hidden migration policy because the Hungarian labor market needs more and more person and human resources, and it's really interesting that we try to collect that kind of human resources not on European level, then we invite that kind of workers from Asian country. So more than 100% from Asian country was invited in the last year to Hungary, and they have all the resources to living in Hungary, although in the legislative background related to Asian workers and Ukraine workers on the same level, each employer should offer not just work, then kind of accommodation for the person. It means we have migrants, but they are living isolated in a society, and the employer are responsible to isolate the person, because if the person are meeting with the normal population, the announcement of that kind of migrants policy is not protectable, and it's for the politician more and more question when they have these experiences in the everyday life that they are living. So just an exemplar, we are living together with 200 citizens in our city. And for the next 5 years, our mayor announced before the election, the local election, that after 5 years we will together 200,000, instead of 200,000, 230,000 persons, and the 30,000 will be invited from that countries.
Still, it seems to me that having good policy and not having policy is a challenge. So, any other challenges you would like to have us here mentioned?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, it's a really big challenge to establish that kind of services and supportive resources for the person who wanted to stay long term in the city, because after a special period, the normal aid stops, and the person has to integrate into the normal life and the local society. And that means that they need further protection, because living together with children or parents who has a special needs, it's not easy to manage. And 1 year is not enough to integrate, to have friends, to have other kind of connection, and really became a part of the society. And I think so it's amazing important the communication with this person, because we communicated at the beginning of the crisis that the Hungarian or the other population in the Visegrad countries support the displaced person. But I sincerely also have a lot of things from the person who are living with us, because they are paying taxes, they are consuming and paying taxes, and they can act together with us. And I'm afraid the part of communication is not enough to look and to integrate into the society that part of displaced person or that part of society without any clear communication, that it's a balanced connection and not just kind of support and kind of hierarchy that I'm able to support you and you accept all this that I give you. It's not a good basis for assimilation or social integration. So I think so the clear communication with the population, that it's a long-term process leading together and became a unified society. We need more clear picture and more clear communication from in the media or in the everyday life too. And I think so it's could be a part of the education program too, that we are living in a multicultural society, and it's not the case in case of your generation that you are living in isolated society. They have to work together with other person from different culture, and you have to understand each other, because it's not for the 21st century is not possible to isolate the societies and living as an island person that nobody just me and no one other culture, just us. So it's a problem, especially in Hungary nowadays, that the person that use all kind of foreigners.
It's to some extent, I think, an issue for all the countries. So you're not an exception here. But I may say, I'm not sure if you agree, especially now, it is about this further step or the second step, right? When the first needs are met. So that could be a good point to start the first part. And I would like to ask you about some positive results that might be taken from your studies and used for the future. And those that could be observed for the last 4 years. Are there any? It also could be related to what you've just said, right? So maybe those practices related to how we treat those people, how we try to make them feel integrated with the society, and elements like that. How do you see it?
So maybe I should start with the positive part.
I'm just looking at you, but it doesn't mean that you have to answer.
I think so. It was really positive. That doesn't matter what the person get information from the media. I was able and ready to have the person. And as the mentioned in her presentation, it was not formalized supportive networks, then informal networks. So the whole that the society able to have, if the other person needed that kind of I think so it's a positive sign that we are living in a society and not isolated collection of individuals. And the second positive thing, discovering that the time is mother. So after arriving the first displaced person, nobody knows what should we do and how can we organize the different resources. I mentioned a lot of private person gave different art of donation, and it was not well organized. How can we distribute and how can we deliver and which resources we have? And I think so, step by step developed such kind of platforms on private level, Facebook and other platforms, that the person tried to communicate with each other and they find a solution without any regulation or public services and other kinds. So there is a network of society based on digital technology where we collect the information. And the third one, the validation of the information is also important. So it doesn't matter that the hundred of platforms offer different options for job, but nobody knows which kind of job they offer. And the validation each other, the information is also important. So step by step they build up this private society or civil society based on that kind of information using the digital technology. So I think so it's also important. And I hope so that some kind of pilot project have a future in the mainstream which can support them. For example, how can we support the traumatized children in the school, because we try to embed it into class and community, the children from Ukraine, but we haven't tools how can we help them to manage this psychological background, and more professionals are able to help them, school psychologists, social worker, family services. They discover this need and they try to organize the communication network, how they are able to help professionally for that kind of children, and not just the children need such kind of help, then the women also, because the men are at home in a precarious situation and they should overcome all the difficulties and have to manage the everyday life here in the host countries, and they need such kind of help without any mental support or other kind of support, because the friends it's not there and other kind of relatives is abroad and so they are really alone, and in that situation they need especially after 1 year, 1.5 years, more and more mental support than financial support, I think so.
Thank you. Any good practices in the Czech Republic?
I'm not sure of good practice. If you would ask me a year ago, I would tell it like one of the biggest positive things from the situation was that the NGOs and other informal groups became more of the partners at the local level, at the level of central government, and that this situation with Ukrainian migrants helped to overcome this kind of hostile environment that was created in the NGO and the industrial sphere. But in current situation, I'm not really sure. I can still say that, because I do think that the political situation became much more unstable, and NGOs are once again aim of very open political attacks, and it changed a lot in that year, and I think now it resembles more the situation before the Russian invasion and migrant wave. So maybe something stayed from that non-hostile term, but I think we went back into other things.
But it's very sad what you told me. You as a country are usually a good example for NGOs from Poland, so am I right? So that's why it's a pity that it's going this direction. But
And the situation is in Slovakia even worse.
come on, it's supposed to be about good practice.
But good practice was this really, as Pavel mentioned, that you could see. So, for example, as I mentioned, this national strategy on the national level, that we have updated the strategy during the first stages of the war, and it was updated in very close cooperation with the NGOs. So they came up with a new plan and like also what will happen if like more people will come, if there will be some waves. So it was really very good like managed because the Department for the Crisis Management was coming from the third sector. All their people were coming from the third sector, and they called all of the like really like biggest NGOs in Slovakia dealing with the refugee crisis. So it was really like example of the good cooperation. But now we have really like open attacks on the NGOs, so it's a similar situation. But I could mention as a good practice example some of the initiatives in which there was a business sector involved. So, for example, in Slovakia there was a like initiative Who Helps Ukraine, and it was like continuing initiative from the COVID, because it was in COVID it was called Who Helps Slovakia, and it gathered like people from the businesses, and they try to organize like first really support for the Ukrainian people, and it happened that like some of the business like companies, they just said like people that you can work in this like initiative. It was informal for I don't know a couple of weeks, and we will like they just like said them that you will be like full time working in this initiative. You will not work in other like business. And it was I was part of it like 1 month that they started, and we tried to manage them the work with the volunteers. Somehow it was very challenging because the people from the business sector, they had really different approach to many things. But in part of the like these initiatives were also like a couple of NGOs, and this was really nice cooperation, like how the people were approaching, how they started to cooperate, and the business sector was really like helping in this situation, like many other ways, because they were dealing with the housing, with the transport, with the borders, like with the Ukraine. So there were many like sections, and they had really this like approach from the business, try to manage it really efficiently. So this was something that maybe we could learn also from the future, like from this experience, to cooperate in this situation also in the business sector.
Okay, thank you. How about
Maybe I can mention some good examples.
we know how to work without the government.
We really have a big hope that this strategy will go together with funds. Because of course, if you have a document, it's only paper, it doesn't matter. But we big hope that it will go with funds. I think in Wrocław, we have such a good experience of creating activities, empowerment activities, and directing them not only to refugee community and not only to foreigners, but activities directing both to host society and refugees. So in that way, we create a space, a safe space to meet both communities and refugee communities. For example, it could be different activities in which we don't need a high level of language proficiency, for example, sport activities or summer camps for kids. So it's a win-win strategy to create such events. And also I want to mention issue of language and issue of naming. Based on our experience from past 3 or 2 years in our city unit, we understand that we don't want to emphasize that we do something for foreigners, for migrants. For us, we treat them like a new residents of our city. And it doesn't matter if they came here for a couple of months or couple of years. We want to treat them like a new residents. And for example, here in Wrocław has such a place that creates city space that creates events for both host society and migrants, and it's called the Passage of Dialogue. So you don't have this name migrant or something. Of course, it's important because migrant and foreigner will know that he has his special situation, and for sure he remember about it every day. So from our side, we try not to emphasize it one more time.
It is also for the language.
Yes, yeah. And for example, now the government has such an idea to create integrational center for foreigner in every big city, and in Polish language it called Centrum Integracji dla Cudzoziemców. So it's very a name that has this word foreigner. So like they can go there and have all public services in one place, but do we need to isolate migrants in one place in the city?
So you see, maybe national policy will not help.
Maybe.
Maybe we will not need it. Government.
Yeah.
Let's wait for the offer. Any other remarks or thoughts? The question to you all.
I think it shows like that situation today is really different from the beginning, because a lot of refugees are not really different from other migrants, and a lot of them don't want to integrate, to learn a language. They come here just to wait to the end of the war, and now they see that the ending is not coming, so they stay somewhere in between, and they need to think about the future, if they gonna come back or stay and integrate in the society. And I think it's really hard for them now, but also as a good example of good practice, I think there is a lot in Czech Republic initiatives from Ukrainian migrants themselves. And it helps refugees to feel at home, I think, to be with their people, if you know what I mean, because a lot of them just missing their homes and don't need to be integrated into the society, to people in the Czech Republic, in the Hungary or Poland. They just need to be at home, and they can't be at home now, but they can be with people. They get them with people that they would, I don't know, speak about some cultural events and so on. So I think that those initiatives from the migrants, from Ukrainians, help them a lot more than typical migration NGO strategies.
So would you say that what they need is integration, but this integration cannot be too aggressive?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I'd like to say thank you to all the researchers and all scientists that work on this book. And as I'm from Ukraine, I understand that you work hard and you not only as researchers, but as people who understand in what situation are now Ukrainians, because I think we come to Poland to other countries not in a good life, in money, but the most what they want is to feel safe. And I understand that European Union countries have a lot of problems with migrants, not only from Ukraine, but from Asian countries. And as we see on the party system, they want to close and to be national system, not open doors. But the situation involved is so that Russia is a great aggressor, and not only in Ukraine, but in other countries we are not feel safe, and today this problem is in Ukraine. I hope it will stop, and in our country we look at the clock rather than be the end of the war. What will be the because we not only we don't want to go on the territories that are and stop the war. We want to win and to have our homes back. And I think all the countries of Visegrad Group work hard, and they give opportunity to work. They go low system with the strategy of the integration of migrants and refugees. And I think the point is we are civil society. We are the one of the countries that have a lot of resources, really, and not only labor resources, but resources that are interested by the country of aggression. And I think that in our cooperation we will win, and we will have a safe society in the global world. So thank you from Ukrainians for your work and cooperation.
You're welcome, and we won't stop. I hope so too. I think the biggest challenge for us all is to give Ukrainians this possibility to make their own choices now, right? If they want to stay here, they are welcome to be here, right? To stay. But if it's possible, or when it's possible, they may go back, right? But it has to be their choice. Just to sum up this part. Yes.
Just a short remark. So I think so. Doesn't matter if they want to stay or going back home. It's important to offer different kinds of services, education and training, because it's a kind of support after returning when the war is stopped. After returning at home in Ukraine, especially the baby can use this knowledge which they have during the staying in the host countries. And it's also kind of support for building the country afterwards. So that's why I think so it's important working together, offering them that kind of services, training programs, support, or other kind of knowledge which could be useful after returning when the war is over and they have to start to rebuild the whole society and services and that part of the country which started, the
Definitely.
Well, especially that for us, 2-3 years, it's not a long time, but for the children, my small children who came here right after the aggression started, it's a very important period of development in their lives, right? So that's why for me, the education and also psychological support. So if I were to indicate the good practices, for me, it's definitely the activation of the public and the private sector in all our countries. And in terms of transnational capital, it were like similar even initiatives. And for now, if I could recommend anything, the psychological support would be direction that they can show their support, especially when this, let's say, survival mode ends. And the psychological mental health is even more important, right? When people realize that this transition or transitional period may take a little bit longer, right? Or even it means rebuilding in a foreign country or rebuilding in Ukraine. And if I may also refer to what Judith said about the communication, and for me it's like a great problem of the whole rhetorics on security in Europe. Because even for us, for Polish people, for Polish citizens, when we deal with war every day, right? We observe our sky and so on. The war is so close to us. When it comes to competing for social services, places in the hospital and so on, we are kind of forgetting about the misery that is so close to us. So it's I think the overall picture is needed here, and it's not to be achieved if there are no specific strategies, and not only on the national but generally European level. So this doesn't matter what we will need in the future, what kind of good practices, and if we, and I hope we will continue what we managed to achieve, what we managed to experience, without this common understanding of how difficult the situation is, how serious the danger from these is, it will be difficult for our societies to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for understanding.
I know we have at least one question from the audience, right? Will you?
Yeah.
So could you please introduce yourself and, of course, ask the
Okay,
question?
so hello, first of all, I'm Ash Kurashvili, PhD student of the University of Warsaw, Institute of Political Science. But I have three questions. So can I ask? Not much. Okay, so my first question is, as I remember, based on the experience of Slovakia, that there is like a gap between policy design and practice. I mean, what are they did clearly in strategies and policy documents, and what's the practice? So my question is, why it happens, how you can explain this reality. I mean, is it related to the EU normative power, and that's why you have these principles in these documents? Is it like, is it related to administrative culture, or why? I mean, why decision makers declare in something, and then implementation level is different? Thanks. Second question is related to the, it was mentioned in the presenter from Hungary, as I can remember, and you mentioned that like very interesting things about immigration and disintegration rates. So do we have any data how affects on economy in Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, or in Czechia? Yes, and the third one is about public institution. So my question is, why is it problematic if, for example, in Poland, there will be one public institution which would be responsible for immigration issues? So for Ukrainians, I mean, is it related to the stigmatization or marginalization that they are migrants, or are there any other problems or cleavages or challenges? I mean, why is it problematic if we have one public institution who is responsible for these issues? Thank you very much.
So the first question was about like this gap between the decision making and between the strategy and the policy practice. There are a lot of reasons, so it's not like so really easy to answer. But one of the reasons I said it's like there are like always two kind of policy papers. One is like strategy that is covered also with the budget.
Yeah.
And then you have a strategy that is not covered with the budget. So these are two different like documents. So many times in case of Slovakia, so we have, for example, strategy for civil society development or strategy migration policy, but it's not covered with the budget. So it's more the clarity, what should be done.
No? I understand. So you're just seeing that objective, that like we're seeing, but how? So you don't have.
Yes, and there are also some action plans, but action plans are putting in the practice that it's like, you know, it's really, it's not that you do not have these type of indicators that you should achieve and you have a budget for it. So we have two kinds of policies. So this is one of the reasons. The second reason is that, you know, that like always the strategy, it's like the decision making of the government, which is in the moment of approving the document, the government. And then when the government is changing, so they can say that, for example, it's happening now in Slovakia, so they can say, but it's nice that we have this document, but it was not approved by our government, and we have other like ideas, how should our policy look like? So they, for example, because many of these documents, they are not approved by the national parliament, because it's like strategic documents are approved by the government. So that, for example, you could see on some strategic documents that some of the like points in the strategic documents were already cancelled by the current government. So they said that, for example, I could tell you example not from the like migration policy, but from the civil society development, that we have this strategy for civil society development, and this like government is really attacking on the NGOs. So they choose from this strategy some of the points, also there about the civil society, but about the participation, like civic participation, and they just cancel them. With one of the sitting of the government, they were cancelled without any explanation. And when we asked for the explanation, they said that these are not in line with their program. They were approved. So you see that it can happen like this, then you can fight against it. But if the government has really like big power, like in Slovakia, they can approve not only everything in the government, but they can approve everything also in the national parliament, because they have a majority, and they are going. The laws are going like this. Same situation it was like in the Hungary. So you know,
Yes, the Hungary doesn't work to parliament because we declared the extraordinary situation, and that's why in the last 2 years the government can take a decision without any parliament.
So it's, you know, so this is like the reason why there is sometimes the gap, because like you can always involve in this implementation of the civil society development plan, and it's like you have also action plans. But what is like happening that the office responsible for these plans should report if the plan was met or not in the like specific year. And if it was not met, there is no punishment for it. So who should be punished? That the Ministry of Interior doesn't met these objectives. Well, themselves, they will not punish themselves. So this is the reason. So sometimes when we have a policy, so for example, that is covered with the budget and there are some indicators, and the European Union is pushing that you have to have this policy, because they are also controlling if you are like you have this policy and without it. So for example, another example is youth work. In youth work, every country needs to have the state strategy for the youth work, and they are really checking if the state has this strategy and if the strategy has really like indicators. So, and there are also like some controls at the national level, but the strategy is covered with the budget. So because it has to be, and like the European Union said that you have to have it, because there is also one strategy on the European level. So this is like the reason why there can be really a big differences in the like policy level and then in the practice.
Thank you.
If I can, I think that another barrier is because on the ministry and the people who prepare the strategy are not experts in the field, because they are talking to the ministry, talking to the institute, and they only say what they do, and they can understand about the field.
Or it's also the, like regarding the ministries and the public institutions, public officers. It's happening now in Slovakia that it's not only changing of the government, but they're changing of the administrative people, like the people in the field, and they are hiring the people who are really not, like Janka said, the experts in the field. They don't learn because they don't have they don't have them, or experts that doesn't want to work for this government. So it's happening that you should expect that at least if the minister is not expert in the field, so at least the people in the ministry should be the experts. But it's happening that they are also not experts in the field.
Thank you.
So I don't want to like be frustrated.
I mean, it's a really, really interesting experience, so.
But it's the reality.
The question was from Hungary.
Yeah, I was thinking about that should I give a further explanation for that question. I wanted to say, the playground is really large for the politician, and they can make different treaties and finance different way. And the punishment, what we realized in the last years in Hungary, that the European Union stopped the finance if we don't fulfill the indicators or we don't play with the European Union, and if they pushing the Hungarian government and the government want to push against, they stop the finance. So this is the similar tool to coordinate the common ways or to finance the common goals. Otherwise, it's challenging. Back to my question. So it's really difficult to answer your question because we have a lot of actors and a lot of levels. If you want to check the economic impact of the migration process. And during our research process related to this project, we discovered a lot of studies which start to compare the revenues and expenditures on government level. And especially in case of Poland, because Poland has over millions of displaced persons, they have that kind of number which shows that the government revenues is less, expenditure is less than the revenues, because the people are working here, taxing here, paying the social insurance, consuming things, giving a further job for the person, so they have a positive effect on the economy and the revenue of the government in Poland. But I think so it's a long-term process to make that kind of researches. And the second level, which could be important, to the competition between the economic region and in the countries in European Union increasing in the last decades intensively. And economic development without any human resources is not possible. So that's why if you observe this competition, who will win this competition, and the technical tools is already there, so it's not a question to buy a computer. The question is to buy a person who can make an excellent program for the computer. It means human resources. So I think so. If competition will win that region or that government or that economy who can win the best human resources in the European countries. And as Margareta mentioned, the Ukraine displaced person have excellent qualification and they have excellent experiences. And it's based on human resources that keep them in the countries. So I think so it's also an important factor. But this question, or discussing about this question, it's not so objective because it's override the political interests too. So having correct numbers, it takes time, I think so.
Very much.
Yes, so the last question was about case of Poland.
The last question was about why
Public administration.
Yeah, public institution, yeah.
Public institutions dedicated
why
to
is
the immigrants.
responsible for this immigration issues, why it could be problematic, or is it related to the, I don't know, like discrimination or stigmatization of migrants, or why it could be considered as a problem?
According to the European regulation of the European Union, this person have the same right as the citizen in the host countries. The problem is the capacity of the services, because the capacity of the host countries in public services not increased parallel with the number of the citizens who wanted to use these services. This is the problem. You can imagine if Wrocław have 6,000 inhabitants and get 200,000 person, suddenly they want to use the schools, the healthcare system, the academic care system, and the government has to finance immediately this kind of needs, so it's a problem. And certainly they have to plan long-term the capacity of these services. Could you imagine in the school with 20 classes and suddenly you need 25 classes, you need rooms, you need teachers, and you need other kind of facilities, so it's not easy to develop that. I think so long term they have to plan with this capacity plus capacity, otherwise the satisfaction of the citizens of Wrocław will not support the local government and the mayor if they have to stay alone queue before the healthcare or before the doctor.
Thank you very, very much.
It's the same as to have the special services for the woman. Do we have special services for the woman? They have also different needs as a man, but they have equal rights. So if we are speaking about the inclusion of people, that they should have equal rights, why we are offering them other services?
Yeah, my question was about the.
So you would not feel good if you have a special department only for
Is this way considered as more effective and this is the logic behind your?
Maybe on which level? If you think maybe on the central level, it's useful to have some public institution that is dealing, in the case of our countries, we also have some central body which is dealing with these questions. But on the level of the interaction with the people, I think it's not useful to somehow, I really like this approach to open the public services for everybody and try to adapt the public services, for example, in case of the language, that there will be the people who will understand the needs of the specific groups. So this is, I think, the approach.
And I think that it's not really a problem in case of stigmatization about the reason why there won't be, let's say, Ministry of Immigration and Integration is because of different duration of public administration in Europe. Americans would have agency for immigration because in the United States there's tradition to make these theoretically narrow agencies that integrate the issue. But here in Europe, the tradition of public administration is very much different. We have ministries that are much broader, and if you have issues like migration, if you have issues like social inclusion and things like that. It touches on different aspects of different ministries, and that's just the way it is here in Europe, and most likely it will be like that in future years.
Yeah, and I think also from the kind of technical operational point of view, it's also not effective because this super ministry, let's say, would need to, or the kind of super institution, would need to cooperate with the rest anyway, right? So the problem which would be supportive, which would be stabilistic towards each other, and another thing also. The problem with executing the responsibility may appear, right? Because the super migration institution would say, okay, but we need to apply, we need to be clients of the rest of the ministry. So it's not our fault, it's not our responsibility that we can't get an access to something, right? So it's definitely the level of legislation and the fact that we should work towards the inclusion, not exclusion, but also simply the organization of public services. But what was mentioned before, the strategy and even the European strategy of migration, that's a different thing, because then each institution would need to, each ministry and other public institutions would need to apply these strategies. We need to work on this. So this would be much more efficient in terms of some kind of unification of procedures and hopefully also facilitating the access.
I do not see any other questions from the audience, which is good because we need to finish. Thank you for your all interesting conclusions, thoughts, and so on, and for your inspiring questions, as you could see. This is it. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the conference. I hope it was interesting and for me personally it was very inspiring and a useful wrapping up of our project. So thank you very much to the participants, and I consider our conference closed. I'll only ask the team, the project team, to stay there for a moment so that we can have a photo. The nice and the bureaucratic.